Too often preachers use illustrations that distract from, confuse, or even contradict the point they're making. A sermon isn't an assemblage of random information relevant to a subject. It's an unveiling of the Holy of Holies from outside and downhearted to face with God and beholding the glory. The distracting illustration is almost always a sign that the preacher deep down has lost confidence in his or her argument and settles for amusing or interesting his or her congregation rather than transforming them. The question of anecdotal or literary or personal reference probably takes me more time than any other part of the preparation. I simply sit in a chair, close my eyes, and ponder as deeply as I know what connection, typology, event or story this point deeply resonates with, and then try to be as rigorous and patient and honest as I can in discerning whether the story is apposite, appropriate, and mine to tell. Before leaving this phase, I should say that not all my sermons are exegetical. About 1 time in 5, I'll depart from the method I've outlined and respond to a pressing or topical issue in the community, church, or world. You get the right to do that if people trust that you've opened their eyes and hearts and souls to the glory. You don't get to do that if you've lost confidence in the Bible or your ability to glean joy from it and settle for preaching newspaper op-eds or blogs instead. Writing and revising. By this stage, I hope it's clear that most of the real work has been done. As I write, I'm sticking pretty closely to my prepared structure and building up to my last line. Then as I revise, I have 4 questions in my mind. And these are perhaps the key ones in going from good to great. The first is, does the sermon show real nuance of the complexity of faith and the texture of life? In today's sermon, I try to bring this out by highlighting the difference between the terms precious, honoured, and loved, and dwelling carefully on what it means to be loved but not honoured, or honoured but not loved. If your congregation trusts that you see the true complexity of faith and life, they will trust the resolution you offer to the struggles they all too well know. The second is, how is my tone of voice? Do I sound generous-hearted, compassionate, gentle, yet clear? Or is there a harshness, a throwaway recklessness, a judgmental denunciation, a superficial generalization that could undermine all the good things I want people to hear and cherish? Do I sound clever or wise? Is my illustration about myself attention-seeking or a subtle form of boasting or self-promotion? Could I tell the same story as if it were about someone else to equally good effect? Are all the examples about men? Is the humour laughing with or at? The third question is my argument moving at the right pace? I may be very familiar with the fact that Israel went into exile, or that Jesus' choice of 12 disciples corresponds with Israel's 12 tribes. But am I racing too fast for the congregation to keep up? When I get to my key points, have I prepared the listener to know this is the big moment, or structured in a different element of surprise? Is there enough lightness of touch to help the listener maintain concentration throughout? Are there enough signposts to ensure the listener never gets lost? Am I unwise to be making a 4-step argument, and could I do all I need to do in 3? Is there anything the congregation need to have in their hands to help them grasp what I'm doing? Can the choice of hymns or anthems or the theme of intercessions or introductions complement what I'm planning to say? Fourth, what single thing do I want the listener to be humming, praying, repeating, treasuring a day, a week, or a decade later? What will be the memorable takeaway? Surely not try harder to love your daughter. Just now it was very simple. You are precious, honoured, and loved, and so is Israel, and so is Jesus. How do I make that simplicity so elegant it's infectious and irresistible? And finally, delivering. A sermon isn't fundamentally a written document, but the event of reading out or relay a love letter. Delivering should be about conveying a letter drenched in love from God to the congregation. You are speaking to the people for God. The congregation should feel like it. When you're bringing good news, smile. When you're saying hard things, say them tenderly and gently. Don't be embarrassed. You don't need to earn the listener's respect. You have, in some formal or informal way, been commissioned to do this today or regularly. Enjoy the privilege and fulfill the responsibility to the utmost of your ability. Make this the best sermon you've ever preached. And if you fear the text isn't your very best, make the delivery your very best. Don't reveal your discomfort or insecurity by making unnecessary jokes or comments as you begin that don't add to what you've truly got to say. If it's really necessary to acknowledge someone for inviting you or some such other introductory remark, clearly distance that from the sermon itself by saying your invocation after your opening comment to indicate a significant change of mood. Don't ad-lib offhand comments, however humorous, as you go along. It's very unlikely they'll be as valuable as what you've prepared, and they may be catastrophically, if unintentionally, hurtful, offensive, or inappropriate. Most of the things I've regretted saying in sermons have been off the cuff, often in relation to an unexpected noise, interruption, or equipment failure. Take your time, trust you have something blessed to say, and cherish the words that may be familiar to you, but are fresh and life-giving to the congregation. And recognize the value of eye contact. It's not necessary to have eye contact with everybody all the time. I used to use a text only very seldom, so as to maximize the intensity and immediacy of what I was saying. But I came to realize how much people engage with a sermon by reading it again later, or by reading it without having been there at its actual delivery. And for those experiences, you need to provide a text. But you can have the best of both worlds if you're sure to memorize key sentences, most obviously your last line. I want to finish with two uncompromising statements in answer to the two most common reactions to what I'm saying. The first reaction is, I don't have the ability. Not hearing that from anyone here, of course. I say, I bet you drive a car. The first time you sat in the driver's seat, I bet, like me, you had no idea of what you were doing. In my case, I drove into a hedge, and even 3 weeks after I passed my test, I wrote off a car by not looking where I was going. A car can do immense damage. So can a sermon. A car can also take you to the most beautiful and precious and wonderful places in the world. So can a sermon. What's the secret? Stick to the rules, keep filling it with gas, and get better at it. The second reaction is, I haven't got the time. I say, the awesome God of heaven and earth longs to be revealed in all intimacy to the people who are pining to behold the glory and be transformed by the renewing of their hearts and minds and souls and lives. And you have been called, commissioned, and given the priceless opportunity to be the messenger of that wondrous story. And you've got more important things to do. Really? Okay, let's stop there. We've got, as promised, about 20 minutes for Q&A, so I suggest we just come straight in. Who wants to go first?
So we heard an example of a tone of voice that you use for like a more gentle. Can you give us an example of like other tones of voice and maybe like show us?
It's funny, I remember preaching at Hope College years ago, because I was 7 years in North Carolina, and preached all around the States, and I remember when I went back to Hope College a couple of years later, I met would have been a sophomore and was then a final year student, who the dean of the chapel, or whatever the person's role is there, introduced me to and said, "This person's got something to tell you," and it was great actually, because the student said, do you know you're the only preacher, and this is somebody who'd done a lot of YouTube preacher following, you're the only preacher I've come across who, when they get to the most important part of what they're going to say, gets quieter. Because most American preachers shout at that bit, in case you weren't paying attention, in case you missed it. And I hadn't ever realised I did that until the student pointed it out. But actually I felt quite good about the fact that I did that. Not because it was different from everybody else, there's no virtue in being different for its own sake, but because I think that's what God does. Still small voice. And if I think about what are the most memorable things that have been said to me in my life, I think more of them have been whispered than shouted. I want what I'm saying to be memorable. I'm making no apology for saying that. That's not about arrogance or whatever. That's about saying, that's what I just finished with. You've been given this fantastic commission. These people are dying to hear it. Don't be shy. Now's not the time to be shy. Do it as well as you possibly can. So I also I had a tracheostomy when I was a rugby player, when I was at college, which means I can't shout. I can't sing either. Really, I've got about 8 notes. I'm not saying I was ever, Mr. Opera singer, but I had a better voice than I have, but I really can't shout. So again, I think since that happened to me when I was about 21, it's just folded into my character. So I don't shout. I just don't do that. I don't do Michael Curry. And you've all got to find your own style that fits. I will talk a bit more tomorrow about making your preaching consonant with your character. Because if you turn into this strange person, you put on this strange voice, you start using this vocabulary that your family don't recognize you using. What is that? That's a bit creepy. I find it really funny. And if it was something maybe a generation or 2 ago, I'm not sure it works anymore. I think authenticity is the name of the game. I'm giving a bit of a long answer. I do occasionally do a slightly different thing to what I did just then. Obviously the sermon I preached was a very intimate sermon, so it was particularly soft focus. But if I'm some of the things that I was saying, particularly the more challenging things towards the end of my commentary, was a kind of, come on! There was a kind of, and then I think that's just a question of how comfortable I am with the congregation stroke audience, or how comfortable they are with me. And you never want the medium to get in the way of the message, so you don't want to remember there was this guy who just kept shaking his arms around and his, I'm trying to convey a kind of, I'm trying to convey elegant simplicity, a kind of simple confidence, which is what I think God has in me. And I'm trying to convey that to people, so I try to keep my head still, I'm not throwing my arms around, because I don't want to be more interesting than God. The classic youth worker sin is to feel their job is to be more interesting, because God is frankly really dull, and therefore as a youth worker I've got to be much more exciting than God, and maybe people will, having had the big dose, will get used to the rations that they'll have to live with for the rest of their discipleship. I don't want to convey that. I want to say the joy is in the gentleness. Gentleness for me is maybe the 8th fruit of the Spirit, but for me it's the number 1. So that is about, I'm going to try to give lots of different answers. I'm not saying I never do this kind of in the right environment. I'm not beyond doing a bit of that if I sense people are getting a bit sleepy. You know, or even though I'm going to break one of my own principles now, or even if I'm feeling that having a prepared text, especially one that I'm not, I haven't had a chance to look through in the previous 48 hours to actually delivering it, isn't really doing it for people, then I will probably, just do that. Okay, let me put this another way, which is more with the hands, more sort of sleeves rolled up, more kind of, okay, not the kind of cliche I'm tossing away with my prepared remarks because I'm so moved by the interaction that we're in the middle of. Because that, to me, that's a cliche even for teenagers. But something that's a bit more direct and vulnerable. I hope that's not too long an unhelpful answer.
I'm hearing a lot of ethics within your sermons. So I want to know, do you intentionally draft your sermons with your interest and love for ethics, to put out these bullets, to put out these pillars?
Do you mean in what I preached tonight, or
in what you finished, what you did tonight, and in general? And then the last part is, how do you go about preaching an ethical relationship which gives honor to God, but this relationship is directly specified between human interaction with one another, the way we treat each other, and how that honors God as well?
Well, I'd like to feel driven by the text. The text I preached on tonight was a vertical text, to use old-fashioned language. It's about Israel's relationship with God rather than Israel's ability to embody it. But obviously, when I would like to think, or when I was crafting the sermon, I would like to think the most powerful part of the sermon intellectually is when you suddenly realise it's all there in the baptism. That's the sort of big finish intellectually of the argument. But because it's kind of surprise, you got so into the rest of it, you suddenly think, oh gosh, the baptism is the whole of Israel's story, just like that. How about that? But the emotional heart of the sermon is precious, honoured, and loved. And well, at least I'm saying this is in crafting it. This is what I'm hoping people will feel. People obviously take away their own stuff from anything you say. But that distinction between what it's like to be for someone to say I love you, but not to honour you. I'm expecting people to go